always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.
I'm Nicole Rajan Brown. I'm a proud midwife, and I'm proud to be supporting the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, who have helped me to grow, and for creating wonderful professional digital and online resources for midwives across the globe. The Maternity and Midwifery Forum ran their programmes free and online all through COVID. Now we want to grow the catalogue, spread it worldwide, and keep it free to use for students and staff. To do this, we have launched a fundraising appeal to help keep all of the 8 wonderful maternity and midwifery festivals free. Keep the weekly Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the weekly newsletters free to midwives and maternity staff. You regularly tell us how much you value these free resources, so do give what you can.
Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box sets curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets, and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.
I'm Nicole Rajan Brown. I'm a proud midwife, and I'm proud to be supporting the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, who have helped me to grow, and for creating wonderful professional digital and online resources for midwives across the globe. The Maternity and Midwifery Forum ran their programmes free and online all through COVID. Now we want to grow the catalogue, spread it worldwide, and keep it free to use for students and staff. To do this, we have launched a fundraising appeal to help keep all of the 8 wonderful maternity and midwifery festivals free. Keep the weekly Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the weekly newsletters free to midwives and maternity staff. You regularly tell us how much you value these free resources, so do give what you can.
Welcome to Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. My name is Dr. Jenny Hall. I am the box sets curator at Matflix, a fellow of the Royal College of Midwives and a former editor of The Practicing Midwife. At Matflix, we bring together videos of talks from top maternity experts into box sets to support your continued professional development, study and revalidation. It is a perfect study accompaniment for midwives, maternity professionals, midwifery students and anyone thinking about a career in the maternity services. My job is bringing together the latest thinking area by area so you do not have to. Not only do you get the video of brilliant talks and relevant content in thematic box sets, you also get access to the audio version so you can listen on the commute or while you walk the dog. Plus links to the latest research in the relevant field, government policy documents, the presenter's PowerPoint and more besides. Sign up to Matflix now for the best video streaming from maternity experts.
always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets, and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.
I'm Nicole Rajan Brown. I'm a proud midwife, and I'm proud to be supporting the Maternity and Midwifery Forum, who have helped me to grow, and for creating wonderful professional digital and online resources for midwives across the globe. The Maternity and Midwifery Forum ran their programmes free and online all through COVID. Now we want to grow the catalogue, spread it worldwide, and keep it free to use for students and staff. To do this, we have launched a fundraising appeal to help keep all of the 8 wonderful maternity and midwifery festivals free. Keep the weekly Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the weekly newsletters free to midwives and maternity staff. You regularly tell us how much you value these free resources, so do give what you can.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. My name is Sue MacDonald, and I'm the curator for the Midwifery and Maternity Festivals and the Midwifery and Maternity Hour. And it's my pleasure to be chairing this evening, and I've got 2 lovely guests. I'm so lucky with my guests. I have the lovely Simone Prinz, and I have the lovely Nicola Enoch with me. And because we always do this to our guests, we're going to ask them, or I'm going to ask them actually, on your behalf, to share with us a moment of their week. So shall I start with Nicola first?
Okay, well, my moment was absolute relief this morning after discovering my desktop had died and it didn't have any backup, that it still had a pulse. I took it to the computer repair shop and he literally got a stethoscope out and was listening to the back of it. I thought he was winding me up. But so all my work is on it. And so that was an absolute huge sigh of relief. Yes.
My word, I have fellow feeling as to when
Yeah.
my machine blew up
It's
in
terrifying.
2018 and your whole life runs before you.
How reliant we are. So tonight I'm on a neighbour's laptop because mine's still
Oh my word.
being repaired.
Oh, it's at the hospital.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nicola. And Simone, welcome to you.
Hello,
Have
Sue.
a good moment of the week to share with us.
My moment of the week was on this Monday when I started a course at BFN, the Breastfeeding Network. I've been wanting to start this for a long, long time. And I feel that my older children have grown up a bit now and I've a bit more me time to sort of, do such things. So, I was very excited and, very happy to start that.
Wow. And that's supporting other mums.
Yeah, so it's
breastfeeding
initially a
journeys.
volunteering course where you work
Wow.
volunteer as a peer supporter.
Wow.
So yeah, I was very excited to start something new.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing that, Simone. I have to say, I'm always amazed on mums who I know are really busy and they'll just put even more in their lives and manage to juggle everything so brilliantly.
Mm,
And I think you've just illustrated that brilliantly, Simone. So thank you for sharing.
thanks.
And thank you to Nicola too. Now I'm just going to do a bit of a welcome because I know we have old friends with us this evening, and welcome to you as always. But we'll also have a few new people, so welcome to you. And if you haven't been to the Maternity Midwifery Hour, just a little teeny weeny bit of history is we were born in the COVID lockdown, the first COVID lockdown in the UK. Born because we couldn't, for student midwives and midwives and anyone in maternity care, everyone had to focus on services and couldn't attend study days, conference or festivals. So we felt it was really important to just even have 1 hour a week. We could really focus on things of interest and importance to midwives and student midwives and other people in the maternity services. And initially we did a lot on COVID because we didn't know much about COVID, and we looked a lot about how services were changing and what was changing and what midwives were doing to change services, how maternity services were looking and how education was changing. And it was a very scary time, but also very amazing because of the things that midwives and student midwives and other people supporting maternity services did at that time to make sure care continued for women and their babies and their families. And that was fabulous. So we did the maternity hour and we carried on, and we're there in our 5th year. I can't believe it, really. And just a little note to you all that everything we do is recorded from the Maternity Midwifery Forum. So if you have a power cut or your computer dies midway through this evening, you can catch up because you'll be sent a link probably tomorrow or the next day, and you'll be able to access. And if you don't get the link, you can always look through Matflix, and you'll notice on your resources that Paul is putting online in the chat box. There's lots of resources you can access, some of which from Nicola and Simone, and some of from the forum, including the Matflix link, so you can go and check up and have a look. I have to give you a little health warning. Once you go in and you start looking at the Matflix back catalogue, which is getting bigger by the minute, it's a little bit addictive, I have to tell you. And if you're just looking for something for revalidation or for a project you're doing, you can sometimes get a little bit distracted and find lots of other delicious things that are very interesting, which is part of the glory of professional development and education. So enjoy if you access that. Now, we also love you to share. And this evening, just as other evenings, you'll find it very interesting, and maybe there'll be a little bit of challenge, and maybe there'll be things that are new to you. One of the great things for us in learning and developing is sharing with our colleagues. So if you find it useful, new, and you're a student, for example, share it with people at university or in the clinical area. If you've got time in between a busy, shift, got a coffee break, have a chat about what you've learned, and direct people to the Maternity Midwifery Hour, because people can learn themselves about it. It's a very good way of learning. So enjoy. I'm going to say a thank you to our midwives and our student midwives, our maternity care support workers, as I always do. Now, you might have noticed I've got a very husky voice today. I've got a bit of a cold. There's lots of colds going around. And because there's lots of colds going around, everyone's having to work a wee bit harder to cover any absences where people are poorly. So thank you for all that you're doing to keep things going. Now, I'm going on to a little news bit. This week, 1st of March, and I think that might be Friday, is Zero Discrimination Day. Always a good thing to celebrate. It's National Heart Month, which I only found out today, which is useful. And because it's spring, it's Snowdrop Month, which is lovely. You might have snowdrops in your garden or in your garden box. Lovely. Now, the big news for us at the moment in the UK is our Chief Executive of the National Health Service is standing down, and that's Amanda Pritchard, and she's seen loads of changes through when she started in 2021, including the Omicron wave of COVID-19, remember that? And also seeing through the booster vaccine, remember that? And she obviously has led all the reforms going on that go on all the time. It seems to me there's always reform going on in the NHS. And also, we've got a new chief executive who will be starting alongside Amanda for a while to get eased into the post. And this is Sir James Mackey, who's initially on secondment but in the role. And he's going to look specially at the NHS and social care and how that works even better together. And he's from Newcastle, so welcome to him in his new role. Also, I'm going to point you to the resources again. There's a couple of really interesting things. One is from our Neil Stewart, who's the chief brains, what is reported and what is real in maternity. And if you've wondered about what gaslighting means, have a read of the article. It's not hard. Quick article, but it's really interesting and something we need to know about. There's also a couple more days on the Royal College of Midwives Research Prioritisation Survey, Part 2, that some of you will have participated in Part 1. And obviously the little QR code is also in the resources as well. Phew, and I've almost stopped exactly on point. So this week we're going to be looking at the care and support for parents who are expecting a baby with Down syndrome, and the information and support they've got available to them, and also to think about what we as professionals have, because if we don't know the stuff, the knowledge, it makes it hard for us to support parents in their journey with a baby with Downs. And I'm going to start by introducing, and I'd also need to remind you that full CVs are available online. I'm just going to do the sort of headline bits so that both speakers have as much time as possible to speak. So I'm going to start with welcoming Nicola Enoch, who's the founder of Down Syndrome UK, which is a charity renowned for its very positive about Down syndrome initiative. Nicola is mum to son Tom, and she's passionate about ensuring that families have access to clear information, and practitioners also have that information, plus guidance on good practice and the importance of language and support. So I'm going to welcome Nicola. Welcome so much this evening, and thank you so much for coming to join us. The screen is now yours.
Thank you very much. I welcome the opportunity to be here and really to let you know about Down Syndrome UK, the charity. I'm going to start off with my personal story as to how I got involved, why I got involved, and then share with you some insights, some sort of research we've undertaken, and some of the sort of key findings. So I'm parent to Emily and Tom. In fact, I must update that photo. Tom's now got a beard. Who are Tom's 20, and it's fair to say that just over 20 years ago, when he was born in the August, you can see now that I'm fairly immersed in the community, being heavily involved with 3 charities, 2 national and 1 local. But 20 years ago, when I was pregnant with Tom, I was actually found myself going for the extra screening to establish whether or not my baby may have Down syndrome. I was aged 39, and certainly I knew the risk, the language, the word risk was used, of having a baby with the condition was higher. So at 20 week, this nuchal test actually came back fairly sort of lowish risk. So I'd carried on, and at my 20-week anomaly scan, the sonographer expressed concern that it looked like baby has Talipes club feet, and that could be indicative of a chromosomal abnormality such as Down syndrome. And I was absolutely terrified. It was a Friday afternoon. The screening midwife immediately booked me in for oh my goodness, my brain's gone, amniocentesis the following week. And that was basically the route was very much that I'd have this further testing to establish whether or not baby had the condition. And I remember going home that weekend and obviously jumping on Google and thinking that I couldn't cope with a baby with a learning disability. I thought I could cope with a baby with something like talipes, but given I'd had 4 miscarriages prior to having Emily, and having an amniocentesis does have an increased risk. On the Monday morning, I phoned up the screening midwife, and to this day, I say it's the best decision I've made. I cancelled the test. So fast forward a few weeks, and Tom arrived on a Monday morning by elective section, and for 24 hours, I was absolutely euphoric. I had a beautiful little girl and now this gorgeous baby boy. Almost 24 hours to the minute after Tom had been born, a paediatrician came across to the bay, and she expressed concern that they were worried that it looked like baby has Down syndrome. And it's fair to say that my world absolutely fell apart. I was desperately upset and felt so alone and so scared. And the hospital weren't able to offer me any meaningful support. I craved information. I'd never met anyone with the condition, and yet here I was, having gone from absolute adoration and euphoria to devastation and despair. And so that first night, after they told me that it looked like Tom has Down syndrome, I actually lay in my bed crying and wondering if it would be better for us if Tom didn't survive. And then he obviously did. But 3 days later, when I left the hospital, I left without him, and we left him in Skaboo, another eventful weekend on Google, whilst we decided whether or not we could, again, cope with having a baby with a learning disability, or whether to have him adopted. Another eventful Monday morning, we went back and we brought Tom home. And to this day, I have not for 1 second in my life regretted that decision. So I found myself, it took me a long time really to come to terms with Tom having the condition. And I think a lot of that was exasperated by the lack of information that was available to me. In the hospital, Tom was born in 2004, and in the hospital I was given a leaflet from the 1970s, which basically kind of perpetuated those outdated images that I had in my mind. And there was no support. I was in hospital for 4 nights, and in that whole time I was given 6 words of positivity on the Wednesday night when I was told you have a beautiful baby boy. Apart from that, it was pretty grim. But I realized that there's a lot of research and that I wanted to connect with other people. And so in 2006, set up a local group in Warwickshire, the Ups of Downs. And over the years was meeting other parents who were going through similar situations to myself. And so in 2017, set up Positive About Down Syndrome, just a website, which has gone on. We've now got the national charity Down Syndrome UK. And so as a charity, we've gone from, in the past sort of 5 years or so, we've really focused on working in maternity care to address the language, the use of the word risk, abnormality, disorder, all of that language has such negativity, and to sort of challenge some of the attitudes and to ensure that parents are receiving the information and support they deserve, and that the professionals have access to training and understanding. So as a charity, we believe fundamentally that we're working really hard to create a world where everyone with Down syndrome absolutely has the best opportunity to live the best life. As I've mentioned, we provide training both to our parents. I don't call it training to parents who want to be trained, but information sharing sessions and so on with our parents, and a lot with professionals in healthcare and education. We provide counselling to those parents who perhaps are expecting and struggling, although the majority of babies are diagnosed postnatally. So we do also offer support to new parents, both mums and dads, and indeed grandparents. The support we provide, I think, is exceptional, and something I kind of feel parents joining us online remotely, and I know, you know, we give them a big hug, and I can sort of sense their sigh of relief, realizing they're not alone. We do also campaign and lobby. Resources is key, and sharing information. And I can't read my screen. I think it says Macat on the bottom right-hand side. That's some other training we deliver. So it's really encouraging. We each year undertake some surveys to understand, you know, what we're doing, and that parents, you know, really value the work that we're doing. Really quick introduction, just in case someone doesn't know what Down syndrome is. It's a genetic condition, the most common, that it's literally just an extra copy. Our children and young people have a little extra, and children are born to women of all ages. Often people think, you know, it's just older women, but in line with the rest of the population, the majority of babies are born to women under the age of 30, and to parents of all backgrounds. And that's been, for me, that's been a fabulous thing, connecting in the community. Everyone with Down syndrome will have a learning disability, and one of the main challenges is that their communication, their speech will be delayed. There are common physical characteristics, and many will have additional health needs, but also many don't. And please scrap the outdated stereotype that all children with Down syndrome are happy and loving. They certainly aren't. They experience all emotions the same as the rest of anyone else. So in 2019, having had a bad experience myself and reaching others, I kind of realized we needed to collate data to be able to publish it, and not just, you know, cite individual experiences. So we undertook a big survey, 1,410 women across the UK, and published that research. And some of the key findings were, you know, in line with myself, that the majority weren't receiving any meaningful support. And at the time of diagnosis, and also, at the time of diagnosis, no information. And I guess one of the other key statistics I should state is that 90% of women, whilst who do have an antenatal diagnosis, go on to terminate. And as someone who was on that path, and certainly it was a consideration, I can completely understand why, because with lack of support and lack of information, and as you'll see, some sort of pressure, it is the expectation. Our survey again sort of highlighted that there's initially an expectation around actually just undertaking the screening, whilst we all know it's an opt-in for those women who the majority just go along without even thinking about it. But what we find is that for those who say, no, I don't want to have my baby to be screened for these conditions, 40% were offered it again, and over a quarter repeatedly. And I just think, given this is an opt-in, no one ever says, are you sure you want to screen? Even though they're choosing to. So sadly, almost a fifth of the women we spoke with felt that they were pressured to terminate, that was the expectation, and no one felt any pressure to continue. And one of the things I'm particularly passionate about addressing is women's decisions not being respected and accepted. We talk about women's choices, we talk about women's autonomy, and I find it very unacceptable that a woman who said that she wishes to continue, that her decision is undermined, and she's repeatedly asked. And for a lot of women, you know, it's a very, very distressing time. So more recently, we've undertaken some research with Warwick University, and the first section of that was published, I think, last year now, and that was looking just specifically around the impact on the women's mental health. And I was very reassured to see that in the 2023 CQC report for the general population, 85% of mothers surveyed felt that they'd had sufficient mental well-being support. That sadly is not the case in our community. For those who were told whilst pregnant that their baby has Down syndrome, only 31% felt they were given sufficient support. And those who received a postnatal diagnosis, just over a quarter. So there's clearly, a lot of work to be done supporting our parents. And a couple more statistics, just over a third felt that the attitudes, definitely had a negative impact. It was the attitudes of the health professionals, not just lack of support. And whilst, I say no one can predict the future, and yet all too often our parents are told what their child can and cannot do. I was told that my son, if he played football, would never play for England. That 69% really felt that they needed more information, some sort of just general reassurance about their life going forward. And certainly for me, I can verify that. I was terrified about the future. Some of the sort of general feelings from our parents and things that they would sort of feed back is sort of around attitudes and sort of assumptions, perhaps, from healthcare professionals. And because I always say you don't know what you don't know. So we try and sort of share to make people think about it. But often our children are they're sort of almost treated like this homogenous group of, I can remember various professionals saying to me, they do this, they don't do that. Women may be told they don't breastfeed. And actually, what's really important and is a key message, I think, is for parents always want their baby to be seen as the individual that they are. And yes, whilst in the context of baby having Down syndrome, not to make these sort of generalized comments and sort of sweeping statements, to see past the condition. I think that's one of the big things. And to, not just focus on the negative things, the potential challenges and issues, but to see beyond those and to give parents hope and have high expectations. My goodness me, Tom has smashed all my expectations out the park. I should say now, he's 20, he's living his best life. He's trained, qualified as a fitness coach, ready to leave home, and he had a girlfriend, but they split up last year. But he's very keen to get married. Language. I can't underestimate how the impact of language. I can remember, as I said, chromosomal abnormality, risk, all those words. I'd never met anyone with the condition, and yet I was, of the belief that having a baby with Down syndrome was to be avoided, and that I'm sure was, partly my lack of life experiences and the sort of fact of segregation, but definitely the language used by healthcare professionals. So we don't, we have undertaken freedom of information. So it was something like when we last did it, 46% of healthcare trusts were still using the word risk when sending out screening letters. We're just repeating that early this year. Don't refer to abnormality, problem, disorder. Please just see Down syndrome is just a difference. My son has a different genetic makeup to my daughter. And I can remember speaking to some lecturers, and they were telling me about a course that was around breaking bad news. And, again, it's a mindset thing. We prefer to sort of advocate the use. Think about sharing. You're sharing news. The news may be unexpected, and it's different about what people were expecting. But if you go in with the mindset that you're breaking news, that's only ever negative. And normal isn't, again, for parents, if they sort of are told, well, your baby is not normal, so we use the word typical. And our community prefer to always use person first language. So Tom has Down syndrome. It's not Tom is Down syndrome, or the Downs boy, sorry, that's slightly separate from. So briefly, just to sort of finish, as a charity, we provide, as I said, a lot of support. We have closed Facebook groups. So, you know, if you have any expectant parents, congratulate them, send them our way, please. We have an online group. At any one time, we have about 100 expectant women. And then new parents, we've got 800-ish parents of a little one up to the age of 18 months. And so it goes on, preschool, primary, etc. Publications, obviously, it was one of my priorities was to produce a book full of contemporary stories. Our Nobody Told Me book, I think it's 154 pages, variety of stories, sort of sharing that lived experience, which every, expectant and new parent craves. And then we'd go through, we're not just working in the very early years, but we do, going choosing a nursery. And in fact, we're doing a lot of work now in education too. Training and webinars, we have a free monthly webinar that's very popular with healthcare professionals, typically a Monday or a Tuesday lunchtime, 12 to 12:45. And we have a range of professionals speaking or parents. And do please sign up. There's a QR code at the end. And we welcome the opportunity to deliver training in person or online to maternity unit staff. We do a lot with universities. So please do get in contact. We have a training manager who would be delighted to work with you. And I should say we also do a lot of work around breastfeeding. And I have a Sarah who works, we're also working with the BFN to try and develop. I was interested to hear Simone. I didn't know that. She'll be one of our volunteers. So training, we do a lot of. I'm really keen to work with midwives and students. And we were delighted to collaborate with the RCM. We've got 2 modules out now, and this next month, 21st of March, is World Down Syndrome Day. And I think the aim is that they're going to launch the 3rd module, Down Syndrome Care, on that day. So there'll be 3 modules that you can access there. And that, in essence, is pretty much it. That's myself and the team. We're parent-led, so I say, we get it and we get it done. So whilst, with you guys, I'm talking about the sort of early years, as parent to a 20-year-old, we do sort of carry on supporting our parents and the practitioners who work with them beyond. So I hope I've come through on time. Do take a snapshot, scan the QR code and join our community, please. We're really always very, very keen to work with you and support the professionals to ensure our parents get the very best care and support that they deserve.
Fabulous, Nicola. Thank you so much. You've managed to get a huge amount in, plus your personal story, which I think always makes the whole thing come alive, really, to kind of explain. And especially that 20 years doesn't sound a lot in some ways, and yet it does. And yet
Yes.
you hear the same sort of issues being raised.
That's right.
Which I suspect may come with when Simone speaks in a moment. So we'll return to Nicola. So if you have a question through to me, and without further ado, we'll move on to Simone Prinz. And I'm delighted to introduce Simone. She's a mum to Sufyan, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, and she experienced concerns being raised at 20 weeks gestation when she experienced a lack of sensitivity and support. So going back to Nicola's experience, very much highlighting gaps in communication and care. So her story is really one of resilience, advocacy, and the need for more tailored support for families receiving a Down syndrome diagnosis. And this is very much not fashionable. This is really important for us as midwives and students to kind of build into what we do, is very much real tailored care and personalized care for women and their babies and families. So welcome, Simone. The screen is now yours.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm very excited, very honored to speak together with Nicola, of course. So my name's Simone. I'm from the Netherlands myself. We came to the UK in 2009, so that's 16 years ago, almost half my life. No, a bit less. I'm 46-year-old. I got Soufiane when I was 45. So Soufiane's 15 months now. He has Down syndrome, obviously. And when I did my 20-week scan, they initially said to me that they saw excessive fluid in his kidneys. So at the time, and I have other children, so I wasn't that concerned. I thought, that's probably a case of he didn't wee or something. I didn't have a clue that it could be related to Down syndrome, and I hadn't been told at the time, because I think the sonographer isn't also allowed to sort of say something about that. So she did say that there was a concern, but she didn't say anything else. So I was referred to fetal medicine at that point, where we did other scans, and it was initially still the same. The excessive fluid was still there. 4 weeks later, it was still there. And at the start of my pregnancy, I declined all tests, and that's partly because of my religion. So I'm Muslim, and I reverted 25 years ago. So it's part of my religion that I'm convinced that anything that God decides for me, that's fine. And obviously God is, in my opinion, he gives and he takes, and whatever he gives us, that's perfect. So it hasn't crossed my mind. And also with my other children, I had always declined any tests before. Sort of naturally, I declined them as well with my latest pregnancy, until obviously the discussion came up. Like they saw an abnormality. What do you want to do? So I was a bit confused, I remember at the time. The doctor was a really lovely gentleman. I went to the women's hospital in Birmingham. He was really lovely, and he did. He left me the choice. I mean, I wasn't pressurized. I didn't feel like I had to do it, or he said it was completely up to you. And I remember asking him what he would do, I guess. And he was like, well, I like to have the knowledge about a certain situation. I like to know. And I think that sort of made me realize that I would like to know as well, in terms of that there was a possible chance, and I might be able to look into the subject a bit better, have some background information, know somewhat what to expect, I guess. So I decided there and then, when I had the second or third scan, that I wanted to do the NIPT. So it was done immediately. And then they said, okay, you get the result within 7 to 10 days, which seems an eternity to me. So when they called, and I think it was actually after 7 days, I think it was a midwife or a nurse, I can't really remember, but they sort of said, oh, are you Simone? And I said, yes. And then they said, okay, we have the results of your blood tests. It came back 99% positive for Down syndrome. And in the week prior to getting the results, I already cried my eyes out, sort of thing, because I already thought, what's going on? And I've never related the abnormality to be a sign of or a symptom of Down syndrome. So I was a bit all over the place. And when she said that, when I had that final phone call, I was a sort of like, I guess I was numb at the time. I cried so many times already that I just took it in, and I didn't cry. I didn't get upset. I just said, oh, okay. something like that, and that was it. But later I thought, well, when I thought back of that, obviously that conversation loads of times, and I did think it wasn't sort of the best conversation. Well, it's obviously difficult news to bring, but I do think no matter how the mom sort of responds or reacts, I think there should be a sort of at least a conversation about it, like a bit more maybe time, a bit more care, a bit more empathy. I mean, I like I said, I responded quite like neutral and not very bothered, maybe even, but obviously it's sort of, I was completely like shocked, and I even started thinking after we sort of ended the conversation, because it was just like, oh yeah, you'll have some other scans every like 4 weeks and that's about it. They didn't really say anything else, and I was like, well, what do I even know now? And I actually remember thinking later, okay, she said 99% chance, but what does that even mean? Like, in terms of, I actually remember thinking, does that mean that test is 99% accurate? Is that what she meant? Like, is it a yes or a no, and the test was 9% accurate, or is it actually a 99% that my child has Down syndrome? I was so confused. But even after that sort of conversation, I sort of was convinced that my child wouldn't have Down syndrome, and I would be the 1% that would beat the odds. That I was convinced, almost convinced, that was me. That 1% was going to be me or my baby. Well, fast forward. Well, luckily they didn't see any other sort of symptoms. So Soufiane doesn't have any heart condition. They didn't really pick up on any other sort of symptoms. So which obviously sort of strengthened my feeling of, see, there's nothing wrong. It's all going to be perfectly fine. And then when he was born with 39 weeks. The labor was induced because I had diabetes, gestational diabetes. So they said, okay, he's quite big and we don't want him to get too big, so that might cause problems. So we want to induce labor. Okay. So he was born 39 weeks. And whilst I've been thinking probably from the 20th week of my pregnancy, all I could think about is Down syndrome. Once Soufiane was there, I didn't even think, like, he was born and he didn't cry. So I was really concerned, and I remember saying, why is he not crying? Why is he not crying? I got a bit panicky, like, what's going on? And it turned out that was quite an interesting delivery, actually, because he was born in the sack. Like, that was really like an experience. And unfortunately, the midwives forgot to take a picture, so I don't have any proof. But yeah, that was quite interesting. But then I thought maybe that was the reason that he didn't cry. I don't know, but I didn't hear him. And then they put him on my chest, and he just looked the perfect baby. And I didn't think, oh, he has Down syndrome. I didn't think, oh my God, what am I going to do with him? I didn't think about the future. I just thought, that's my baby and he's perfect and everything's going to be fine. Until probably an hour later, but I don't think this really have something to do with Down syndrome, or maybe it does, but he turned out to have a lack of oxygen. So when he was on my chest, he looked fine. He wasn't blue. He was like perfect newborn until the nurse came and she checked his SATs, and she was like, oh, I think there's something wrong with this equipment sort of thing. It must not work, because this can never be right. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So she swapped it for some other, and then she was like, oh, his oxygen is really very low. And then everybody got really shocked, and doctors came running in, and Soufiane got taken away from me, and they sort of gave him extra oxygen. And then we sort of got rushed into NICU. where we stayed for the 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks on the day, we got to take him home. So we got to NICU, and the only sort of thing I remember that I found really important, because I think after this sort of initial happiness of giving birth and adrenaline probably and everything that comes along with it, you feel okay, relief, and then it sank in. Oh, he has Down syndrome. All right. Obviously I could tell, like, he had certain features that I didn't sort of recognize that my other children didn't have. So for me, it was clear he had Down syndrome, but still, I made a point to chase up genetics, to do that test and to give me the results, and to, because I sort of had to see it. It came back, he had Down syndrome, and yeah, that I think when I got that letter, and it was given to me at the ward because I was there sort of all day, every day. The letter was given to me, and I think from that moment it started to really sink in, like, okay, my baby has Down syndrome. And then I think, well, it was a complete roller coaster, I guess. It's very difficult to describe. I mean, one day you're fine, the other day you're a complete mess, but it's also, I guess, all the hormones still, and we were at neonatal intensive care, so it's a whole sort of different world than you're used to. So I felt it was very, very hard. But one of the things that I can actually remember is receiving the book from Positive about Down syndrome. And I think, Nicola, I think there's sort of a welcome sort of box, if I like it, with a book, and there was a little hat, and I think there was a card, and I do remember that was really sort of heartwarming, sort of although, to be fair, I have to be honest, sometimes I find it really difficult to look through that book. And I was like, okay, at times I was fine, and at times I wasn't, and sometimes I really didn't want to know. But I think that's one of the most important things that I realized, like, it's a whole journey with your child, and you go through all sorts of emotions from, even during pregnancy, and then after he's born, and then still now, although he's only like 16 months, but every little milestone, or you see other children doing certain things, you think, and there's still that bit of grief, sort of painful feeling that you think, and I mean, that's probably going to stay with me for the rest of my life and his life, I guess. But and I was talking to my screening midwife actually this afternoon, and she was such a great support, and we had a lot of talks, and we had, we cried together, we laughed together, and that was really that was a really very supportive bond that we had. And she mentioned, and I would like to sort of highlight this. She said it's very important that you allow yourself to feel those feelings, because you can be sad, and you can be happy, and you can be worried, and that's fine. And she said sometimes people feel sad, and they don't want to feel sad. So say during pregnancy, they feel very sad that their child has possibly has Down syndrome, but they don't want to feel sad. So that might be a reason for them to terminate the pregnancy, because they don't want to feel like, sad or grieving or worried. Whilst I do think, and Nicola, I think, mentioned that as well. I mean, if there's more knowledge about the subject, then you will realize that there's not nothing, but not really that much to be sad about at all. And I think that's probably what I felt was very supportive through my pregnancy, that I was allowed those feelings, and we had, like, after every scan, I had a talk with the screening midwife, and we would just have a little catch up, but also talk about the weather and our holidays, and just very sort of not very, just a chit chat sort of thing, but also allow those other feelings to be there. And I think and still for me, that's very important to sort of realize how certain things make you feel and allow yourself to feel it. Yeah. I've written out a lot of things. I have so many more things to say, actually. We have to invite us back again, Sue.
I did say, Simone, that this is a really important topic, and the things that you've both talked about are really important. And things like you've saying, Simone, which for me is you've had continuity from your screening midwife, which has been really important, and kind of latching on normality and the fact you're not weird or wrong to feel sad or happy or all sorts of things that every person is going to go through with whatever their baby, whatever whether the baby's got Downs or whether the baby's got unwell or whatever. I mean, it's kind of I've scribbled down on my notes. One of the things that I think I picked up from both of you is a sort of lack of someone saying, congratulations, how wonderful your baby is. Because people feel uncomfortable about it, and yet that baby's still a precious part of your life.
Yeah.
Which you've both really enunciated beautifully, and thank you for that, because I think that gives a different feel to the whole area. And I know we've had some comments coming through, and thank you to those of you who are watching now, because someone, this is a lovely comment I have to share with Simone and Nicola. This is from Bernie Howarth. Hi, Bernie. And Bernie says, just tucked my son with DS into bed. I've attended a PAD session many years ago, now a student midwife.
Wow.
And have been lucky to support a woman with a birth diagnosis. Thank you for all you do, Nicola. And that's a lovely kind of whole story to go through. And Jill Phillips, who's also one of our regular people, hi Jill, has said Nicola is brilliant. This is where you're going to go very pink. Nicola is brilliant. I first met her at a Who's Shoe event in Warwick, and we're connected strongly. We used Who's Shoes, and if you don't know what Who's Shoes is, we'll have to get Jill on the hour to share her work, which is absolutely fantastic. It's really all about us all feeling what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. That's the concept. If I've got it wrong, Jill, sorry. Anyway, she goes on, getting NHS staff to think deeply about the language used around Down syndrome. You have a beautiful boy. Let's make this the normal.
Yeah. And the whole congratulations. I think too many of our parents feel robbed.
Yes.
Robbed of, I certainly did, having had Emily 3.5 years before Tom, and, coming home and the flowers and the cards. Whereas with Tom, I just was really miserable and really sad. And I look back and I am, if I'm honest, I'm slightly bitter about that. A lot of the time I'm angry at the way I was treated, but I feel, it could have been so much better.
Yeah.
I needed people, to say congratulations. I needed all of the midwives to tell me I had a beautiful baby boy, not just the one on Wednesday evening shift.
Can I just ask, I mean, did you find that your own friends and family were equally as uncomfortable?
No. And well, people are awkward at times. I mean, I have quite a small family, so I don't have a lot of experience, but certainly some friends would be. There's a lot of, and people say, oh, didn't you know? Did you have the tests? All that sort of mindset, when you go along to the NCT groups and play groups, and you'll find yourself thinking, why are you asking me that? And it's because, we all know that they're saying, well, obviously, if you'd known, he wouldn't be here. That sort of mindset. So I think, there's been a lot of ignorance around the condition. And I think, obviously Tom's 20 now, so it has changed, particularly with the advent of social media and of people with Down syndrome actually getting out and living their lives, and people, being seen on the telly, models, actors, and so on. But yeah, I think there's a lot of ignorance and there's fear of saying the wrong thing. So people tend to not say anything, or they come out with the most awful, shocking things. So, I say to, in our training, we always say, just say congratulations. And certainly the card we'd have sent to Simone was a congratulations card that we send to all our expectant and new parents.
Lots of information. Simone, did you find that when you were a new mum, in that case, did you find anyone avoiding?
For us, I guess it's a bit different because all our family lives in the Netherlands, so it's a bit of it's actually just us by ourselves. But the thing is, I'm actually made a point when we were going, well, obviously at some point we knew that Sofiane was going to be released from hospital, so I made a point to get the balloons out, to get we decorated the living room, we got cakes, and I guess that's for me. Normally, like, for example, I'm not very big at celebrating birthdays at all, but for him, I'm going to do it. And I said to myself, listen, I'm going to celebrate each and every day with him because he's worth it. And it's, maybe it's a bit over the top, but that's actually how I feel. Like,
that sounds
it's really interesting, actually, because as a mom, you start to look very different at your children, but also at life, I guess, because the little things that he does or achieves are actually the big things now. Normally you don't even think about your child rolling over or start crawling, and now it's such an amazing thing. And that's really I think really it shifts your focus, and that's really, that's a blessing in itself. That's the way I like to see it.
Challenging the taken for granted, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, you just realize how much time we all waste on nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm being polite. Don't sweat the small stuff and all the rest. I think our children are tremendous educators. They cut through all the nonsense and just what's important in life. So yeah, I think a lot of us find it really refreshing, whilst a lot of us struggle at the beginning. And as Simone says, you kind of grieve for the life, the baby you'd hoped for and expected. But you kind of, I think it's fair to say, you go on in time to establish that, to realize that actually well, from my experience, I've learned that, there was never anything wrong with Tom. It was my attitude and my knowledge that was in the wrong, and the professionals who should have been supporting me.
But I actually think that's quite interesting, Nicola, because you also transformed from a mom, giving back sort of thing, like you want to achieve a change for other moms. And was that lady that just commented, was her name Bernie, Sue? Did you say that?
That's Bernie, yes.
Howarth. I've written it down. I'll be looking her up.
Yeah, so I mean,
Bernie, watch out.
Yeah, so Bernie did the same, and I feel very passionate about it as well. Like I wasn't really told, like, Sofiane can't breastfeed, but they, if you look it up, they were like, oh, babies with Down syndrome can't breastfeed, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't do anything. But he, after the original bit of a bump in the road, he was fine. I'm still breastfeeding him, and everything's fine. So, and I would like to sort of give that back to other parents as well. Like, I mean, and I guess that's probably the way that it has to be. Like, what you miss or what you have missed in your journey, you would like for other people to.
Well, I mean, that's the giving back there. I mean, I suppose the only thing is, if you have, and I think some of the comments that are coming through on the Facebook at the moment are about, well, what happens if the child is not as well, because your children are doing okay, but supposing it's not as good as that, how can we prepare parents for, because it is difficult, and it's like
It is,
the
but you
whole
just
thing of
don't know
normal
that with
is
any
huge.
baby.
It's
Yeah.
quite wide, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the health needs can vary a lot. And it's, I think people sort of feel compelled, oh, I don't know how to put it. We don't know is the bottom line. We don't know for any baby. But I think what we shouldn't be doing is assuming the worst. And I think too many parents are told all the things that their child won't be able to do.
Mm.
And yet, you know, when my daughter was born, no one came around and said, oh, if she plays hockey, she'll never play for England. You know, I didn't have anything like, do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That I said. And yet, you know, Emily, my daughter's nearly died from sepsis. You know, she put me through hell. She was on life support for a week. And you just don't know what the future holds for any child. You know, and it's the same with the child with Down syndrome. And if you set out your stall that, you know, it's all going to be doom and gloom, then quite possibly it will be. You know, but you've got to not you know, constrain our children and not dampen parents' hopes and aspirations, you know, because you can't tell from a diagnostic test, you can't tell when the baby's born. And yes, obviously a lot of parents don't want to take that is they consider a risk, and that's absolutely their right. But you know, let's not in I kind of look at society and there's a lot of people who don't have the same sort of quality of life as many people with Down syndrome do, who we don't, you know, say, well, what if your child does this or has that condition? You know, they may get a diagnosis when they're 3 or 4 years older with a different condition. We don't know, so we can't pretend we do.
Yeah.
And that
I
is,
think if I may add, I think it's also like having a child with Down syndrome, it teaches you to sort of let go of a lot of things. Because like Nicola said, I mean, I can worry a lot about, oh, will Sufyan ever live on his own or get married or get a job? But I can equally worry about any of my other children or by myself for that matter. Maybe tomorrow I get an accident and, you know, so I mean, I don't think it's very useful to worry that much about the future at all. We live now and it's just count your blessings sort of thing.
and it's also sort of being aware of what support's out there for families whose, you know, child does have more complex needs. You know, and of course for those who are going through, you know, difficult times, I'm not diminishing in it any way, but there is, you know, financial support. But yeah, it is difficult if you've got a child who has significant health needs, whether that's through having Down syndrome or not. You know, you're having to take time off work or you can't return to work. That is, yeah.
I think that's a good point. And maybe it's because in our simple human way, we want definite information. We want to know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And this actually tilts everything on its head, and we know even less about these children.
Yeah.
And I guess if there's less of these children who are born with Down syndrome, we're going to need more information to make sure we understand better, which is a kind of conflict in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that I think you've headed that beautifully. Now I'm going to say I've got a few comments, because I always say this is the quickest hour in the week and it's been gone very quickly. Now I know some people in the discussion group have been saying that there's been a trust that's very good at using neutral terms, but it's causing a bit of conflict with some mums who want more certainty in it. So that we need to take into account. And Jill Phillips has come back to say, I'm looking forward to recording a podcast with Nicola next week. It's part of my regular wildcard Whose Shoes podcast series. So look out for that, folk. And also part of the global podcastathon, please support us by sharing the message widely. So we'll send that out as more information. Then Bernie Howarth has come back. Thank you, Bernie. To say a lovely passage you can say to parents. This is lovely. You're going to go on a beautiful journey, just following a slightly different path. That's nice. And that acknowledges that
it's just a more scenic view sometimes, and you sometimes go up a one-way street, and sometimes you get stuck on a roundabout a few times, but you get to the same destination generally. But perhaps you enjoy, I mean, sometimes you'll get frustrated.
Yeah,
but you know,
I think that's
life,
doesn't it? That's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Nicola. Now we've got a comment because I'm going to draw us to a close now because we're hitting the 8 o'clock. And this is from Kate Wilkins. Hi, Kate. And she says, as a fetal midwife, we celebrate these beautiful babies with their parents, if that's what they want. We never apologise for the bad news, as this isn't the worst thing for these amazing parents. Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Kate, for saying those words and finishing off our discussion this evening. And I think we need to invite Nicola and Simone back. There's no escape. Once we've got our clutches in you, we have you back. So I'm going to say a huge thanks to Nicola and Simone for joining us this evening. I'm also going to thank Angelo, who's in the background, making sure everything's being recorded beautifully, just in case you had that little power cut or you had to rush off. So it's all going to be recorded, and this will be available. It should be available tomorrow. It's also available on podcast at 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Ooh. And next Tuesday, there'll be a link on the Facebook, the Maternity and Midwifery Forum newsletter. So look out for that there. And if you can't share the link, show your colleagues that link because they can access that then. Now, next week, we're going to be looking at research in midwifery, a different view. And we've got Dr. Sarah Ezagabona and Dr. Jenny Hall with us to just challenge us a bit with a bit of research. So it's pretty different, but I think you'll enjoy that too. Now, I've got my little calendar. We're coming to the end of February now. So I've got March for next week, right? But I thought today was very good. The 25th, and I love it. If you haven't met this little calendar, this is Action for Happiness. And it gives you a little thing to do every day. And you've got it on your resources sheet. And I just thought this was a really nice thing for today, to make uninterrupted time for your loved ones. And I think that's really important for all of us to remember, because I always used to say during the height of COVID, give everyone a little extra hug, because they're important to us and we need to show that to them. Now, in the meantime, so while you're giving your loved ones a big hug and having a bit of extra time, stay safe and well, look after yourselves. And I ought to say, actually, because Paul gave me this information, this session tonight was the 189th Maternity and Midwifery Hour. We've got 11 more till we get to our 200th birthday. And we guess what? We get a rating of 4.9 star out of 5 for podcasts. And, you know, can't you just see from this evening's discussion? Thank you all to the audience also for joining us and giving us some lovely comments and a bit of challenge, a few questions. And thank you very much. And we'll join us next week. We'll be in the same place, same time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.